Hi guys, and welcome to this multi-part series on the build of this incredible lava table. Made entirely of European walnut, it's 3 meters long, 50 mil thick, and a 2-tone epoxy pour totals about 70 litres of resin. Keep watching and we'll prove you don't need a huge shop or years of expertise. You can get incredible results with patience, good technique, and the right tools. In this episode, we'll select our wood, choose how and where to cut it, do some sanding and planing prep, and finally we'll chop this monster of a slab in two to get that all-important river effect. Let's get into it.
As so many projects do, this build started with a trip to the lumberyard. We travelled out to Tyler Hardwoods in Marlborough. They've got an awesome collection of slabs, and a smaller exotic pieces too. Definitely worth a visit. We looked through about 50 different slabs when choosing ours. We only had a couple of requirements. It had to be hardwood, about 3 metres long, and it had to be eye-catching. When buying roughs on wood, sometimes it's hard to know exactly what you've got until you've cleaned it up. But if you're working with resin, don't shy away from imperfections completely. Resin can set and strengthen weaknesses in wood, and damaged wood often has the craziest grain patterns. We settled on a big slab of European walnut, with a live edge on both sides, and we took it home. Once back at Crimson, we got a better idea of the literal size of the task we set ourselves. This thing was 70 mil thick, 3 metres long, 1.2 metres wide, and weighed nearly 200 kilos. It was a monster, and the only way to move it comfortably was using these heavy-duty dollies that Crimson had lying around. Under the bright lights, it looked awesome. Some imperfections, but not too many, meant some really funky things were going on with the grain and with the figuring. Now we do a lot of woodworking. But for this huge project, we didn't know what to expect, so we brought just about every tool we make. Having them all there was helpful, but you don't need all of them. As we work through the tools, we'll talk tips, technique, and features wherever it makes sense. The Triton multi-stands were such a hero of this entire build. They're so versatile that you'll see them used a lot. We set up full multi-stands and placed the slab flat on top. It was finally time to turn the tools on. We couldn't wait to see what the slab looked like under the weathering and saw marks. A piece this big is inevitably going to have high spots and low spots, so we began with planers to tackle some of the worst scars and bumps. We'll be using routers to flatten or slab the wood soon, but the more uniform we can make it first, the easier the slabbing will be later. We also got a first close look at some of the awesome grain patterns that the walnut was hiding. We were using some big tools and this was a messy job. Shavings of this size don't often do well in vacuums, so with masks on, we opted to cut now and clean up at the end. If you're a seasoned woodworker, you'll know that unexpected issues can set you back hours, and it wasn't long until we hit our first. While planing, we hit metal that we hadn't seen while inspecting the slab. There's always a risk, and the larger and older a tree is, the more likely it is to include foreign objects. It took us about an hour of digging to pull a 5-inch nail out of the walnut. It was a huge pain, and you've always got to factor delays into woodworking, it just comes with the territory. With the nail out of the way, we carried on. Once I'd finished, we flipped the slab and we got planing again. The river table concept is simple. You chop a slab down the middle and you swap the two halves over. This gives you a live edge of river that you fill with epoxy resin. With multiple tracks connected and lined up roughly where we wanted them, it was time for the cut. Now generally the larger a piece of wood is, the more likely it is to move as the grain and fibres pull in different directions. That's what causes the wood to twist, warp, bend, bow and cup. When you cut into wood and break those fibres, tension is released and the wood moves, which is why your saw blade will sometimes get pinched as you're cutting. Preparation is key. As we did here, make sure both sides are well supported underneath, and cut in multiple passes, taking more material each time. We made 3 passes here to be safe, and on the final one had the 185mm blade of the track saw at its maximum plunge depth. Cut in 2, it was time to line it up and get our first look at that river. We probably spent a good 20 minutes debating the best way for these pieces to sit together. Everyone in the building came to have a look and give an opinion. There was this really awesome section at one end of the slab that we had to include. Cleaned up, we were certain it was going to be special, and we're glad we kept it. You'll see more of it later. Once in position, we set about chopping off the unusable ends of the slabs. This was a bit nerve-wracking as it was essentially setting in stone how the table halves would line up. The flat reference edge across the 2 slabs would allow us to line them up again later. Multi-stand set up again, it was time to do a first pass cleanup of the edges. The U-channel and built-in clamp of the multi-stands came in really useful here, as we could stand each piece vertically. There was one edge in the river where the live edge had been cut off by the sawmill, so we fired up the Silverline angle grinder and faked it by cutting a new live edge to match the existing one. The angle grinder delivered a roughly shaped new edge, and we used the accurate edges and tips of the multi-tool to achieve the exact shape we wanted. At the end you couldn't even tell we'd done it. Happy with the shape, it was sanding time. Now there isn't really a wrong way to do this. We started with our bigger tools, like the 4-inch belt sander, to do the roughest work over the largest area. We worked our way down through the range of sanders to remove all the marked edges of the wood. It's easy when working with nice wood to be afraid of removing material, but unless you cut wood off, it's almost always possible to fix your mistakes. We were using 80 grit sandpaper to start with, really just trying to follow the natural flow of the live edge. Tools with pointed edges or smaller rollers came in really handy. If you're in the market for sanding tools, it's worth having a larger sander for removing material, probably a belt sander, and also a smaller sander for more intricate work and finishing, likely best an orbital sander. It took us probably 3 hours of sanding and shaping to get both halves where we wanted them, but the work was worth it. Next time, once we've built a box and slabbed the halves with the router, we're going to start pouring epoxy. You won't believe how good it looks. Thanks for watching. Give us a like if you enjoyed this. See you in the next one.